Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Saturn Return Diaries podcast. My name is Courtney. I am your host. Hello. And today I'm super excited to chat with our guest. But before we even get into that, I just want to remind you that you can watch us on YouTube so you can actually see the face behind the words. And if you're in the podcast places, make sure you give a rating and review on Apple because it really supports me out. Supports me out, helps me out. You know what I mean? Yeah, so super excited that you're here. And let's dive into today's episode. So I'm super excited because I'm talking to Nadya today. And if you're in the podcast place, you will already hear the story of how I kind of know Nadya. But yeah, I'm excited to hear her story and kind of where she's been through on her journey of her Saturn experiences. And yeah, let's dive in. So, hi, Nadya. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Cord. Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually super excited for this.
This is so
I've,
fun.
I have, I'm like, this is perfect. I love talking to you about this stuff. I just feel like you're so knowledgeable. I feel like I'm here for a therapy session. So
Yeah.
let's start. It's just public.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm here for that. It's so funny. Before I hit record, we were talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, I just want to be like an Oprah Ellen mix. And Nadia's like, yeah, with like a little bit of astrology and mediumship.
And intuition
Yeah.
sprinkled. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
So fun. But yeah, this is fun because obviously like we have calls like and we end up just talking about more than just work. So it's kind of fun to dive in and hear more about your story. Um,
Yeah, and I've obviously done a few of your chart readings, which I absolutely love and highly recommend everyone does with you. Oh gosh, I can't speak. They're so fun. I honestly feel like you read my mind. It's crazy. I think it's been
oh,
incredible. So
you're
I'm
so
super
sweet.
excited.
Love.
Yeah, I love working with you.
Thank you. You're so kind. I know you're like tooting my horn right now. I appreciate it. I did not.
No, I'm being honest. I wouldn't say it. No, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
I'm Russian.
Yeah.
I say what I mean.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's dive in here. So, okay, I always ask everyone this question because I feel like we don't take the time to like actually dive into this part. So, who who is Nadia? Like as a person, as a human being, who is she?
Oh, good question. Um, oh God, I don't know how to answer
It's
that.
tough. Welcome to
It's
therapy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'm like a soul floating through this universe in this dimension.
Yeah.
um, well, Nadia is Russian. She's Russian Canadian. She's 32. Honestly, I am here to gain as many human experiences as I can, preferably positive. I mean, I don't hate the negative anymore,
Yeah.
but I definitely don't like it. But you gotta have those too. But yeah, I definitely am focusing on that as a human being now these days.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm 32. I'm a woman, she, her. I am. I have a partner, and I that I'm super excited to have finally in my life, because I'll tell you more about it when I talk about my Saturn return. I'm a businesswoman. I have my own business, and I'm in the constant search of self and in constant discovery of self.
Mm, I love this description. I feel like you covered so many bases. Like you started off with like the soul and then moving into, like your background and where you're from and then also moving into like things in your life that you're kind of in search of. So the personal aspects plus relationships. You did great. That was amazing.
I don't know.
And I also feel like like what you described is so perfect knowing your sun, moon, rising. So let's maybe go into that next. Do you know your sun, moon, rising?
Yes, because I worked with you. So my sun is Gemini. I was listening, by the way, too. My moon is Leo, and my Sagittarius is. Oh, sorry, my rising is Sagittarius.
Mhm.
I yeah,
Yeah. Do you
Yeah, so
relate
the
to
sun.
those? Like,
I find the older I get, the more I relate to those. And it also depends on who I'm talking to. Like every time you tell me things about my signs, I like you're 100% spot on. But when I'm like reading things online that are general, like about Gemini, things like that, not really, not as much.
Mm.
I also think that when when I thought that it's only about like your sun sign, like Gemini, I kind of I don't like
Mm.
we relate to some extent to all of them,
Yeah.
but I don't really like identify myself as Gemini, even though my friends make fun of me and say, oh my God, such a Gemini. But I don't know what they're talking about. And but once I found out that like I have a Leo and the Sagittarius and the mix of them, I'm like, I can see how it all aligns. So yeah, altogether more so than one
Yeah.
specific one.
Totally. I mean, I really like how you said that. That's been a common theme that's actually come up. Like when I've asked people and they've said, oh, well, like, I don't know, because for what's on the internet. And it's like, yeah, this is the thing that I get super passionate about because I'm like, for example, while we're filming or recording this, it's Mercury retrograde and everyone freaks out about Mercury retrograde. And it's like, that's because people made memes about these things. Like there's so much more to it than what you even see. So we are all of the signs. We have all of them. And that three that we are talking about make up a good portion of your personality, but obviously it goes so much deeper. So um when it's funny when you're like, oh, my friends make fun of me for being a Gemini, like you are a Gemini, but you're also so Sagittarius and so Leo. Like just knowing you and knowing that you have this desire to explore, you even said that at the beginning, like you are, having human experiences, that's Gemini and Sagittarius. You learn through being in other places and taking in these like cultures and stuff, and that probably gives you more inspiration.
Mm. So Sagittarius likes to explore.
Oh yeah. And Gemini's like
Mm.
the learner, constantly learning, constantly
Mm.
seeking and being very playful. Like that like child who's like, what is this? Like asking questions.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Yeah, yeah.
You're
See,
like,
but that's my point. Every time you say something, I'm like, yeah, 100% agree with everything you say.
I love it. I think it makes like it's such a an interesting dynamic, like to have that Gemini and Sagittarius because they're polarities, they're opposites. And right now, this past like 18 months, we've had the nodes, which this is a deeper topic, people. I won't get fully into it, but the nodes have been crossing over those 2 points. So they've been giving you this energy of really pushing and pulling between those two energies, which is cool. And I'm curious to hear how, like kind of how that has shown up, especially coming off of your Saturn return. Um, but for the most part, I think that that's just maybe showing up for you as like questioning what you want for your life and like where you're going and seeking all these things.
So what you mean is that there's the polarity of, and why is Gemini and Sagittarius polar opposites? They're literally polar opposites on the chart.
Yeah. So like
Okay.
magnets, you know how like they're opposite. We have
Mhm.
like opposite, that's Gemini and Sagittarius. And so you have one as your sun and the other as your rising. So they're opposite signs, but they're working together in your chart.
So that's when the kind of like it's kind of tearing me into two different directions.
Yeah. 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 Mhm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I,
It is.
I see that.
Yeah.
There's one of part of me that's very serious, and it's like, Nadia, get your shit together, be serious. And then there's another side of me. It's like, Nadia, YOLO, let's go.
YOLO,
We're
let's
young.
go. Yeah. I love that so much. Okay, I want to actually dive into the serious part of what you just said because this is your Saturn. So, do you know your Saturn sign?
I don't.
Okay, so Nadia's Saturn is in Capricorn, which means you just
That's
had
right.
your Saturn return would have finished in like the last year. Um, and Saturn is serious. It's like rules, restrictions, all the things I talk about here, and the hard lessons.
Oh, they were
And
hard.
yeah, and
They hit me hard.
Capricorn's like ultimate serious. So you have all of this in your first house. So how do you feel like before we actually dive into your Saturn experience, like how do you feel that seriousness shows up in your own life, like now and maybe even before like in your early 20s?
Um, well, so Saturn is always in Capricorn for me.
Yeah. So this would be like a
eh,
constant theme throughout your life.
That there's seriousness in me.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, there's definitely this annoying seriousness in me that I really despise a lot of times. Like, who is this annoying mother who's constantly in my head? Yeah, I'm a very responsible adult. I mean, adult as a child. Like I never, like I would, be 6 years old in Russia, going home alone, cooking my lunch, like coming home, heating up my lunch on a gas stove, soup, eating my soup, and like just always so responsible. I don't think my mom, I think my mom in my whole entire life got mad at me once for a grade, and it was because I think she just had a tough day, like because I was just so strict with myself. I did well in school. Like I wasn't like an excellent student. I was a good student. I tried hard, but it was just because there was like this parent in my head that's like, you must do this. You must do well in school. And like I couldn't explain it why I must do well in school. Like in my little brain, you must eat soup for lunch because that's healthy. Why? Okay, sure. Like you must not do drugs. Okay, never did that. Like you must do, like it just, there was like so many musts in my head. So that's so interesting. And I'm like definitely trying to like unlearn a lot of them as the older I go. That is so interesting that you said that. As I said, you read my mind.
That
Oh,
is so
it's weird.
interesting though, because you have this like disciplined side to you that would be obviously it showed up like early in life. And I'm sure, like, I don't know for sure, but like maybe does that relate to being Russian as well? Like, do you think that that's like a cultural thing or no?
No,
No.
no, I don't know, maybe generally speaking, like if there's I don't know if you take like an average Russian and average Canadian, I don't know what the difference would be. A lot of us probably more responsible in the 90s kids, just because we had more responsibility on our shoulders versus like kids here had like on average less responsibility. So in that sense, yeah, but no, I was just in my circles. I was always just also we had responsible kids, but like I don't know why I was always like, it's like as I said, it's like I had a parent in my head who would always tell me what's right. I didn't always follow. Like I wasn't a perfect child. Let's be honest
You do
here.
have the rebellion. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where is that in my chart? Because I have that too.
Yeah. That is like yeah, it's so fascinating that, you have this and it's in the first house. So your first house is made up of Capricorn where your Saturn lies, and then you also have Neptune and Uranus there, which are all conjunct. So the interesting thing with this, and I think this is important to know again before we dive into this, but people who are in the generational gap of having the Uranus and Neptune conjunction, they're here to really create new systems and structures and do it in like a very like rebellious way. And
Mm,
this can show up, especially being in the sign of Capricorn, as people who create their own businesses, people who have gone against the path that is quote unquote normal and kind of like done it in a different way. And through that, because you have that conjunction paired with your Saturn, it's like you sort of had to have this like discipline to you in order to
mm,
create that moving forward. So now, as you just said, like, oh, I'm unlearning those things. It's like, yeah, you're learning to do it in now a different way as you're getting older, right? So,
mm.
really,
Interesting.
yeah, I'm really curious. So let's dive into the Saturn stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I get so excited. Um, Before I even ask you to kind of tell us more, what would be a word that would describe your Saturn return transit?
I think you said it just now. I think unlearning was probably the theme.
Mm,
Just like don't know shit. Sorry, can I swear?
of course.
And
Yeah.
don't know shit, and like, and the shit that I know is just like not good.
Wow.
So better unlearn and relearn. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so take us back to like the age of 27, which is kind of where I have theorized that this begins? What was going on for you in that time?
27. It's interesting. I actually feel like 28 was like that um wall that almost hit. And then somebody told me about Saturn return at that point. And I was like, oh my God, this finally makes sense. And are you telling me that this is for another year and a half at least? Like, no, please
Oh my God, I
no.
know that feeling. Yeah.
Please stop the train. Let me get off. So, did you experience that too?
Oh yeah. I say this every day. I'm like, I got 2 more years of this shit. Like it's like
Stop the plan with let me get off. Yeah. No, I hear. Yeah, so I feel like that's when I really like 27 was just another year. Like it
okay.
wasn't anything for me. It was just it was when I turned 28 that it really hit me hard. Like I realized that my relationship wasn't working, so I had to break it off. I sucked in like financially. I just like didn't take care of my finances properly. So I had to figure that one out and just grow the fuck up. And because like that's something that I think a lot of times we feel a little disempowered about. And I have financial education. Like I actually do have a finance degree,
Oh, wow.
graduated with honors. And I was terrible at it because my mom's an immigrant, so when we immigrated to Canada there was no like explanation of what credit cards are and
Mm.
any of that, so it's just kind of like you have to figure it on your own, and I don't think I ever like cared enough to figure out all the details. So yeah, anyways, so I and then my business wasn't working like the way I wanted it to work. So I realized that I was spending a lot of time on things, but without much financial like feedback. And at the end, you will always get resentful if you don't get that energy back. So there was a lot of things to unlearn. And there was a lot of relationships also with like my friends and family that I felt like I had to kind of reestablish differently and under different kind of like condition. And the only thing I think that was I had figured out, it was my diet, because I went to nutrition school, spent like 10 previous years figuring that out. So I think that's the only area of my life that was actually good. And I was like, okay, so at least I got that side. And yeah, everything else had to kind of just fall apart before I could bring it together.
Yeah. Okay, so you studied finance in like your early 20s, is that right? Or
Yeah,
okay.
18 to 22. Yeah,
Okay.
like my undergrad.
And what about your nutrition? When did you study that?
I did my finance, and then at the end of my degree, I went on exchange to Thailand.
Okay.
And in Thailand, I was like, I don't want to go to office for the rest of my life. Like, no, thank you. And I think I just changed my mind 180 degrees. And it was such a drastic change that I just like resented everything connected to corporate world and like structure. And um, I went too far. Like I tend to do that sometimes in life. I don't know where that's on my chart that I'm an extremist. So, and then, yeah, and then I went to China to live there for a year and just to figure out what I want to do in my life. And yeah, and then I came back and went to nutrition school in Toronto to IHN, which I loved.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's probably a part of your journey as well, because IHN probably opened up so many different things to you. Um, anyway, so I'm curious then. So where are you, like how old are you at this point? So you finished your nutrition school, you started your business at 28, or was that just before 28?
I started starting businesses
Okay.
right after nutrition school. I realized that you can't really get a job as a nutritionist. Like you'll have to do your own thing. You can get jobs in like, a store or things like that. And I wasn't if any immigrants are listening to me, there are certain expectations from your parents that you're not allowed to do. So I don't think I was allowed to do that, subconsciously at least. And yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I'll do my own thing. Like I'll find my own clients, blah blah. So I started doing that. I really struggled for the first year, and then I moved from Toronto. I moved to Ottawa and back onto my parents' couch because I was broke, and I was confused with what to do in life. And then I started my business in Ottawa, and that's when it actually took off because I think I just relaxed and had the support of my mom. And it was actually really nice living on my parents' couch because my mom's and her husband's couch, because they were cooking me dinner and just being supportive. So it's easier to go out in the world and like make yourself vulnerable when you come home and somebody loves you. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved to Vancouver, and I was still working as a nutritionist, and also started a community of entrepreneurs in health and fitness. And then I was running that for a year and a half, I think, or 2 years maybe. And yeah, and that's when I was like, okay, well, as much as like I enjoy doing this, but I'm burnt out and I'm tired and I can't afford life in Vancouver. As we know, it's not cheap. And it took me, and then I started working at IHN as as an instructor. So I would wake up at 4 a.m. To study to study to be a teacher, because like I had to prep, right? Especially at first, it would take me so many hours, and then I would like go finish the class like around 2, and then I would come home and then work all night, and then I would do the same thing the next day, and it was so exhausting. I was also like broke, so I was like Airbnb my place as much as I could. Like there was just so much hustling, and I was like, I like can't do this long term. Like I need to get out.
Yeah.
So but I was able to save up some money, and that's how I started my next business, ICARIA CBD oil. So
Mm.
and that came, the CBD, ICARIA CBD came to me in that time when I was just so heartbroken, such a disaster, so much work, like just could barely like keep my head above the water. And I tried CBD. That's why I tried CBD oil, because as I said, I'm like a very no drugs person. And I tried CBD oil, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not a drug. That's a supplement. That's a health supplement. That's more powerful than I've tried it. It's a medicine, right? It's a plant medicine. So yeah, and that's how the idea was born. So the idea was
Wow.
born from in Saturn return in the lowest of lows.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
that was a long story.
No, I love it so much. There's like so much to unpack here, but it's so cool to see like the ripples of how things connect, and especially when we're in a place of like not knowing how they're going to connect. And that like hustle that you're talking about, like I obviously we talk about this all the time, but I know that because I feel that too. And I think that people who are going through their Saturn return, it feels like so many things are crumbling. And like, in our world, we're often taught like, well, if we just keep going, like if we just keep trying, then it'll be okay, and maybe it is like, maybe that is partially I'm sure some of that hustling was beneficial to get something out of that, but as you said, it's not sustainable long term. So, okay, let's go back to this little piece here. So you kind of said like things are falling apart. And the thing that was like the most kind of solid was the nutrition school piece. So what were the things that were falling apart that you would say the most?
My relationship, I was in a relationship for 4 years, and we dramatically broke up. I mean, dramatically. Like,
Okay.
I, I feel like I need to make a movie out of it. It was so ridiculous.
I would watch it. Yeah.
It was so ridiculous that it's hilarious now. Can I just tell the story?
Please, yeah, if you're open to it.
Okay. Oh my God, it was too funny. So we were in Peru, and long story short, we got in a fight, and I planned a trip to Peru that I'm going with a boyfriend. Like, I know myself. I traveled a lot enough in my life to know what I want to do alone, what I don't want to do alone. So plan my trip. I'm going with a boyfriend. So I booked. So first half of the trip, we did like Machu Picchu, all that stuff, and then we were supposed to fly to a jungle of Peru. And I've been to a jungle in Laos once, and I am terrified of the jungle because I'm terrified of anything that crawls on me. Today on the street, I was screaming because a bug landed on me. Like, I am like not cool with bugs. I'm not cool with flies even, like not cool. So
Not to
like
mention
I
there's
walk
like snakes and stuff in the jungle, but you're like flies and bugs? No.
I don't care about snakes. Like, kill, like bite me. I don't care. I'm like spiders. Like, I like cry if I see. I have spiders nightmare since I was a kid. Like, I literally wake up in the middle of the night many times, sometimes, and just like, oh, there's a spider. There's a spider in the bed. So I'm like a little freakish with my
Okay.
spiders, and like it's a whole thing. It's like a mental issue at this point. So arachnophobia. So I'm like, I don't want to go to jungle by myself. Anyways, we break up. I mean, we get in a huge fight the day before we supposed to fly to the jungle. And he's like, I'm going back to Canada. And I'm like, go. And he's like, you have to come with me. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to the jungle alone. And it was honestly out of spite, out of like, you will suffer because I'm suffering. So so I go to the jungle. Logic, I mean, yeah, drinking poison to try to poison somebody else. So I go to the jungle and I spend the three, like it was supposed to be 3 nights. I handled only 2 nights, but I spent the 2 nights and 3 days in the jungle. And I don't think I've ever been so terrified in my entire life. I was falling asleep in a like crawled into a ball and just praying to fall asleep and like not wake up until the next morning. But that fear, that pure fear, just really elaborate, like it freed me up from the relationship. The morning after I woke up from, because the first night I actually asked our guide to sleep with me in the same tent because the guide was young and I was like, okay, that's fine. And I'm like, can you please sleep in the same tent with me? And he's like, okay. He was like so excited. He's like, oh yeah, sounds tourist girl, invite me to sleep in the same
He's like,
tent.
that was easy. Nice.
Exactly. No, like, so but the next day obviously we slept in different, like on different mattresses, but it was just like I just could not handle the idea of sleeping alone in that tent.
Fair
And
enough.
then the next night it was another guide and I was like, oh shit, like the other guide was like older and kind of like more confident. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't feel comfortable sleeping with him in the same tent. So I was like, I have to sleep alone now. So the morning I woke up from the night spending alone in that tent, and it was like there was more to it, but I literally felt like 10 feet tall and I felt like I can do anything. I just felt like I'm like, this toxic relationship is over because I can be on my own. Like, I don't need that person to be in my life anymore. And I think that was such a powerful like moment for me that I think that's when like I ended the relationship, but then ending the relationship was super painful after anyways.
Oh
But I
my.
was just firm for the first time. So
Yeah, you walked through the fear of that like so much. Like even just like obviously, the fact that you're like, I'm gonna go to the jungle and like it was out of spite, but like you literally walked through your fear of like doing that stuff. So
literally the worst fear. Like I don't have any worse fears
yeah.
than that. So
That's like
yeah, so that was definitely
that's also such a theme with Saturn, I swear, because it kind of like makes you grow up in a sense, but it's like you gotta like there's a song by it's like a country singer. He's a Garth Brooks, and it's like life is not tried if you're standing outside the fire. Like you have to get in the fire. And I think
mm,
that is like such a big lesson of like, we spend our 20s where you're kind of like exploring and journeying and whatever. Like it's a blast. Like, it's so much fun. But that's why it feels hard during those Saturn return years because you're going up against things that like you normally would be like, "Oh, I'm not going to deal with this." And then you have to.
that's so true. That's so true. That's so true.
Mercury's retrograde right now, so like our words are messed up. It's okay. Yeah. Um,
It's so true though. It's so true. I could not agree more.
yeah. And I guess like so from there, so okay, your relationship kind of disintegrated, you're walking through this fire. you're at this point, where are you living now? So like you went to the jungle, where are you after this?
I'm in Vancouver, so I have to get a roommate. And at that point, and I just adopted a cat too. So I'm like, oh shit, I just adopted a cat. But which was really nice because she was my emotional support. But I honestly felt like, and somebody told me at that point about Saturn return, and that like everything that doesn't serve you have to fall away, kind of thing. That's exactly how it was feeling. Like that's exactly how the next little while felt. Like it felt like, and the sooner you take that, like those things off of you, like the sooner you let them go, the easier it's going to be. I felt like so again, in life I just had a lot of changes in general, just the nature of my personality plus an immigrant. And I remember thinking that I'm like, okay, well, whatever I did until this point didn't work. Like whatever I thought, because it's also stupid. We do something until we're like, oh, when I was 16, I dreamed up a man and he was my dream man. And then and then I was like 24 and I met my dream man that I dreamed up when I was 16. I was a dumbass at 16. Like, how am I dating somebody I dreamed up at 16 when I'm 28? Like, grow up. So I'm like, you know what? Whatever I thought I knew about dating and relationship, I clearly suck. I clearly don't know. And that's okay. Like I don't need to know. I just need to figure out. So I just became really open-minded about things. And relationship was one of them, actually. And I tried dating people that I would never have dated otherwise. And I actually learned the best lessons, like in a positive way from those relationships. Like one of the relationships I got in right away into with a guy who I would never have gotten in a relationship with a guy like that before, just for many, many different factors. And we had the most wonderful, loving relationship. And it didn't work out because we were so different. But I learned so much from them, and they were easy. Like everything was easy. I felt like as soon as I like let go, it took me like maybe half a year in the relationship space to like let go and be like, whoa, I suck at this. I'm like getting rid of that stuff and I'm leaving this for pre-Saturn return. And I felt like the quicker I did that, the quicker things changed in a positive way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh my God, I frigging love this so much. Like I feel like all of that, I'm going to make a sound clip because that was like so, it makes so much sense. You're like, I'm leaving this pre-Saturn return. Like all of this has to go. And your Saturn is opposing Chiron, which is our wounded healer. So your wounds were yeah. And they're
This relationship for me.
yes, like literally, you're literally saying, like, I don't know. And so, like, my hands are up. Let's like try a new way. And that actually is like, that takes a lot of courage. Like, people who can be open minded and walk into situations and who are like, look, I actually don't know. I'm just going to learn and figure it out. Like, to me, I see that as very courageous because you're putting yourself in vulnerable situations and you're learning, and learning is cool, but it's also like new. So
Totally. And I also I'm gonna like add to what you're saying. Like I 100% agree. And I will kind of pat myself in the back a little bit here and take ownership for this. But honestly, like I also feel like a lot of people I hear around me and being like, oh, like dating sucks, and it can suck for sure. I have the worst stories to tell. Like I do, because I dated so much. I feel like I literally should make like a series of episodes about my dating life. They were hilarious. My friends all laugh at me. It's funny. It's
okay,
painful in the moment.
we're having you back. We're gonna do a dating segment, and Nadia is just gonna tell us
Oh
all
my
her
god.
dating stories.
I'm just gonna block my current boyfriend.
Oh my God.
Oh God, I'm honestly. And I feel like but I tell it as a joke, all of it, but it's so hurtful in the moment because you are with an opposite gender, and like it's like our innate desire to like be loved and wanted, and when you're when it's not like that, when something doesn't align, it's really painful, and like you have to like be in a mindset that yes, it will suck. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like entrepreneurship, it sucks, but then there's the highs are so amazing that you're just like the good dates are so good that you're like, I'm ready to take the 10 shitty ones again. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's so true. It's like what do they say? Like if you're the personal development that you get from like being an entrepreneur, but also relationships, like the biggest teachers, like relationships and entrepreneurship. Okay.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And not just like relationships, like just two partners, like also when you're dating men and like dating people, like you learn so much about yourself, and you learn so much
Yeah.
about men and women.
Yeah. So do you think what were the like main themes of your Saturn return? Obviously things are like falling apart as you said, but like relationship, business stuff, like or was it just like
Money.
everything? Money. Okay.
Yeah, it was money. Yeah, it was like, I think it was like making decisions with what stays, what goes. And it almost it felt very like I had a couple of friends that have moved out of Vancouver, and I have to like say that Vancouver was my dream city since I was 16. Like I dreamt about living in Vancouver, and I don't know why I didn't do it earlier, but it took me 9 years, and I've been to Vancouver once when I was 16 and for 3 days. Oh no, 17. Sorry, for 3 days, and I fell in love, and I'm like, one day I'll live here. And I'm 26 and like 9 years later, and I'm like, I'm gonna go live in Vancouver. I always dreamed of it. And it was tough. I had to uplift my life. I had to sell everything, move alone. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anything. And I just moved because I was like, you know what? I've always dreamed about doing it. So I have to do it now, kind of now and ever. And here I am 2 years later, like 2.5 years later. And 2 years later, I am like, what, like, am I actually going to stay here? Because a lot of my friends are leaving because they aren't like, they can't make a living, and I'm like, I have to make a decision, something gotta give. And if I'm not willing to leave Vancouver, which I would consider that a failure for myself, because that was my dream and I had to build a life there, or which I don't feel that way anymore, by the way, because I feel like I've built my life there, and or I have to like leave, and like, so it's just kind of like it just had to give. So like I had to let go, then I have to let go of my money struggles. Like I have to, because I can't continue living in this city and struggle with financially. So I have to figure out how to not do that. And then I had to figure out like what the next relationship is. And the next basically year and a half, I spent figuring out that processes. And there it was slow to start, but you know, eventually
Yeah. Oh my,
sorted itself out.
so much. Yeah, so much in there. I'm like, okay, I'm listening. Yeah. We know where I'm at on this journey as well.
Sorry, I don't have a lot to say always.
I loved it. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm gonna have to re-listen to that back too. Yeah, it's just like the picking. I relate to this so much. Like there's so much that's like leaving, and you kind of have to let it leave, and then also like thinking and making choices of like where am I going next. So I'm curious, like with friendships wise, like did you notice like any big shifts in regards to like your friendship relationships? Or I know you said you built like a new community of entrepreneurship, but what was that like?
Yeah, I think that I'm I like love my girlfriends. Like I have, and my boyfriend always makes fun of me that he's like, wow, you get so excited to see your girlfriends. And during COVID, I think that my like a realization how much I care about my girlfriends and my friends in general has really shown up. And because I'm like, I really need friends. Like I'm that person. And I make friends easily. And I mean, but like old friends is still, they hold always like I almost consider my girlfriends my sisters. Like I really do. Like I feel that strongly about them. And so I think that those people like stayed in my life and they've always been there. But I definitely had to weed out people and energies that I'm like, you know what, I don't align with this energy and it's draining for me to be in this company. So I have to stop hanging out with these people. And I had a good excuse. I had a kitten at that time. So I was like, would I rather leave a kitten at home alone or would I rather hang out with that person? And I'm like, I can't leave a kitten alone at home. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Full on excuse.
Yeah. I like that though. That's like you were like, where do I want to spend my energy here? And it was on your little kitten.
Totally. And if that's the answer, then it's obvious where the friend stands, right?
Yeah, that's so true. So, when you were, is this, so okay, so you were doing like EHF at this time, right?
Yeah, I was doing everything at that time,
Okay.
literally. I was like,
This was that cycle of like 4 a.m.,
mm,
like working on everything. Okay. Yeah.
totally. And that's when like I think the once I started really being like, wow, things need to change, that's when they started changing. And I felt like because they really started changing. Like because it was so the breaking down of everything was so painful and so unpleasant. And I think that me even like getting into CBD business, I know that people are like, oh, whatever, like you started a business, like what's so big deal about it? But just to explain my energy behind it, I was so against CBD. I would not take a drop of it for years. Like I would just refuse it. I don't do drugs. Like it's not my thing. And people like, Nadya, it's not drugs. And I'm like, yeah, still don't do that. Like it's just, I'm just so against it. And then I didn't just take it. I started like actually being like, wow, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I actually started being like, wow, I need to get into this business because this is life changing. So like the energy of doing something so polar opposite of what you thought, like I had to question everything. I had to be like, well, what is a drug? What did I consider drugs? Like we obviously know that, like in pharmaceutical industry, there's a lot of shit they give us that are like terrible for us. So I always knew that, and I, was always cautious about it. But it's just like the rethinking thing, like allowing yourself to like be wrong and be like, I was wrong, like I fucked up, I screwed up, I don't know shit, like, and just staying in that space for as long as possible, like where am I wrong, was really, really helpful. And it's still actually helpful in my life. Like I wouldn't lie. Like, I don't want to ask that question. I mean, who wants to be wrong? Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's like also such a Saturn first house transit. Saturn would have been moving through your first house, and first house is all about identity and like the
Mm.
self. So you were literally becoming someone new. And that's like, a general theme in regards to Saturn return. But if you had it in the seventh house, there's a potential that would be more of like have to do with partnerships and relationships versus the self. So
Mm.
becoming all of that, yeah, like you had to like break down your own walls and barriers that were in your own mind to create your new reality. Um,
So
which
wherever the Saturn starts, that's where like things are gonna go through kind of first,
Yeah.
right?
So you would have had
Mm.
like the area of which when you were kind of having that breakdown of things leaving, Saturn would have been in your 12th house, which is Sagittarius for you. So it would have started to change a lot of your own belief systems and just creating change in regards to endings because that's 12th house. And then as it would start to come down into your first house and enter your Saturn return, this was around 2017 ish. It was maybe a little bit before. Um, but you kind of would have had this like, okay, now I'm really starting to ask myself these questions. And as you moved into 30, 31, this is probably when, like, I could be wrong, but that's probably when that change started to actually like kick into gear.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it took some time, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like getting lost a little bit. And when I was 30,
Yeah.
31,
Time.
getting lost a little bit with COVID, I'm like, what that
Okay.
year? I'm like,
And there's that as well. Like the people, I say this to everyone, like honestly, our Saturn in Capricorn babies and Saturn and Aquarius babies like us, it's like we had our Saturn return during a pandemic. Like what? Like that's like not a like it just.
But then, if there's ever structures breaking down and things to let go of, it's now.
The time has come. That's it.
The time has come. Yeah. So it's a positive. Can be a positive.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think all of this makes so much sense. So, okay, let's just tie this all in together. And now that we have like kind of an idea of where you've been, how has this now shifted to where you are in your life now? And what's come up from all of that?
Yeah, so I figured out my business and my financial situation. I'm not to say that I am, in any sense, a financial guru or or very good with my finances. I definitely make this, like, I don't even want to call it mistakes. I don't even like know what's gonna. Right now, I'm like, it's so hard to predict what's going to be in 10 years. So and however, I definitely have worked through a lot of blocks and a lot of money stories, which has been very liberating because I yeah, it was a long journey. Again, come from the 90s. I'm a 90s kid from Russia, so if anybody's from that area, there was a lot of things happening to us as kids. And so I worked through that to a certain extent. I'm sure there's still a lot of work to do. And I worked through a lot of relationship stuff, which I keep working through because it's my Chiron.
Chiron. Yeah. Chiron.
It's my Chiron. Yeah, I'm definitely that's definitely work in progress. However, I did find a partner that I at least want to work through with, if that makes sense. Because that's also, people like a lot of times I think I'm more of a mindset of you just have to want to work through things. You can work through things, but finding that person that you want to work through things is really difficult because, like, the older we get, the pickier we get too, right? And I think COVID definitely threw me for a loop in my own brain. So I think I'm still like getting out of that space, of that like COVID space, and just being like, okay, no, like we're not trapped. World, like it's fine. Like there are ways out. Like it's yeah. So still working through that. Sorry, there was a lot of mumbling.
No, I love that. And I think it's like a really good representation too of like coming out of a Saturn return. There can be this feeling of a little bit of a fog of, oh, like all of this stuff has changed and I've changed. And now it's like, okay, like I have to reorient myself in this new life. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
I
like
feel that way. Yeah.
think of it even like, our friend Ariana, she's been on the podcast and like coming off her Saturn return, now she has a baby, she's a mom. And so we're reorienting ourselves in like a new way that is the person that's going to take through the rest of this new decade that you're in.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot actually. Now that, when you're, can I just like make a side note for anybody who hasn't turned 30 yet? Once
please
you
do.
turn 30, it's so much better. You're like, finally, I'm out of those 20s. That was a lot. That was a roller coaster. And I just hope my 30s are a little calmer. Like, so, but you also can like, look at your 20s and be like, okay, well, this is what I've done in my 20s. What's the plan for the 30s? And I'm already 2 years into it. Like I'm 32. So I'm like, what's the plan, Nadia? What's the plan? Like, the plan of like, oh, like let's make more money, build more businesses, let's, travel to more countries, or let's, I don't know, meet more people. Like that's all fun, but that's not when I want to look back into my forward 30s and be like, oh, I did those things, like whatever. Like it doesn't feel fulfilling to me. So there has to be something more to it when I'm like, wow, like my 30s were awesome. And that's definitely like contributing to society in some sort of way, like feeling useful, feeling like I've made differences in different people's lives. But I don't know how to like we discussed this, but I'm still figuring out how to do that in a productive way, right? In an actual productive way. So this
Yeah.
is TBA.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the journey is constantly unfolding. And I also want to add that I think you are doing, you're adding to society in amazing ways, offering, something that helped you during a time of your life that, would have been filled with challenges, and then you brought that into the world. It's like, that's really, really cool. And I think that that is something that is very beneficial to society and potentially has the ability to help them coming out of the world that we're living in and have lived through even more. So I just,
Thank you for saying that.
yeah.
Oh my God, it's so true. This is the perfect time to take CBT.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, yeah.
No, seriously though.
Yeah. Everyone needs no, honestly, it's like amazing. Let's just riff on this real quick before this is side note, Saturn return stuff. But so I like obviously found you through Ariana, and but the CBD is so interesting because when you had originally said, okay, like try this, I was like having insomnia, like was like COVID. I was working like crazy, and trying again in my Saturn return, right? And you gave me this, and like I was going through some health stuff at the time as well, and like severe anxiety and depression. And it really helped me like get my sleep back on track. And that changed so much for me. And I still struggle with insomnia a little bit, but CBD just like kind of, I don't know. I'm such a like scattered brained as well. So like if I don't get my energy out throughout the day, or I'm not like focusing it in certain areas, then my sleep is off. And then from that, everything is off. And it just helped so much. So I just wanted to add that. So yeah,
Yeah, no, honestly, and like people don't have to get my brand. I'm just like a fan of CBD.
it's so good.
I, I appreciate you saying it, but I think I'm just like a genuine like fan of it. So
You're like, just
we could
try some. Yeah.
stop, like go to your, I don't know, like get anything. Like, uh,
Okay. So you have this. So where can people find you then?
well, so I have my personal Instagram that's boring.
I don't think it's boring. Yeah.
Where I say things that people don't like. And it's Nadya Peche, NADYAPECHE. And I have my work Instagram, which is at ICARIA.co, ICARIA.co. And that's where it's a little nicer.
Yeah, and I'll have all that stuff linked below, but you also have a YouTube channel which is super like informative in
Okay.
regards to that. And yeah, so I'll obviously link all of that stuff below so you guys can find it
Thank
if you
you.
want to.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to support anybody who's going through the Saturn return.
Yeah. Okay. If there's, let's end on this. If there's anything you could tell anybody who's currently going through their Saturn transit, what would you say to them?
I'd say let that shit go.
I love it.
Clearly not, yeah, serving you. Yeah, but it's true. But I don't think it's just for anybody who's going. I think it's just for all of us. Like I think we're just, especially right now in this time of life, like I feel like we're all so attached, and I'm guilty. That's why I know, right? We're so attached to our opinions, and we're so attached to our stories. And I think that this is more important than ever to just let go, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to do that right now too.
Mm.
Stop getting so angry, Nadia, about shit that doesn't matter. Like, there are people that are dying. There's like a serious crisis in Yemen, and we're not caring or talking about that because we're talking about shit that doesn't matter.
Mm.
So yeah, values and priorities. Anyways.
I love that so much. It's so
Oh, I just went deep.
I'm so into it. You know me, a Scorpio moon. I love the depth. But I just think that it's so true. Let that shit go and like let the stories go. It's hard to do that when you are 30 years old, let's say 28 to 30, and you've had your lifetime of these stories being created, whether on purpose or not. And in the time we're living in when everything is crumbling and changing. And it's like, what an act of bravery to say, I'm done with this shit. I'm not living this way anymore. And I get to create my new reality.
100%. And you know what I also have to say, like, for us, it's kind of like physics, like the train that, like, it's moving with a specific speed. It needs to be pushed with force to change the directions. Like, this is the force that needs to push it. And like, none of us want to like move or change the direction because we're so comfortable in loving our life, right? Because everything is so great. Like, things don't change out of good places. Things change because they're uncomfortable and they suck, and that's just human nature. So I also think that there's something to be said about, like, unfortunately, if you were ever like, oh, like, I need to start eating cleaner or whatever, or like, oh, I really need to figure out and sit down and figure out spreadsheets for money, or like, oh, I really need to do this, like, that's the time to do this, because like it's gonna get worse if you don't start doing it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. I just did the spreadsheets. I've been working on that. I did that on Monday.
Oh, good. If you ever want to do spreadsheets with me, I'm happy to do them. I love spreadsheets.
Oh my gosh. Yes. The answer is yes to that. I get very overwhelmed. So there's that.
Oh, we should have a spreadsheet call. I love spreadsheets.
Oh my God. That's your Saturn and Capricorns, the systems. It's like, if we have a system, we can do it. My Saturn in Aquarius is like, what the frick am I doing?
Like, if we have a number and a spreadsheet, I can do it. Nadia, it's a poem. I don't care. It's in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I love this so much. Oh my God, so amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today and sharing your story. It was super helpful, and I'm sure it definitely probably inspired someone. So
thank you, Courtney, for having me, and thank you for hosting this podcast. I feel like I wish I found it when I was 28.
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting? Well, actually, I have one more thing. Isn't it interesting that something came to you during your Saturn return that then you brought out? And this came to me during my Saturn return, and we shall see where it goes from here.
It's so true. It's so true. And yeah, I love that you're doing it. I feel like you're 100% helping women get through this. Well, and hopefully men.
Yeah. There's some men. I see you guys. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, love you.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Yeah.